Hi guys. We have Justin Ohm with us today, and um I love to say how proud of Justin I am without sounding patronizing, because what I've watched you do, Justin, over the past 5 years is just hands down remarkable. And I feel like um you are one of the torchbearers of our profession in a way that is integrity based and heartfelt and kind and authentic. So please share with our community who you are, what you do, where you are, all of it.
Sure. Well, and I'm very humbled by that. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do half or a fraction of what I do without, the strong family I have around me, the team I have here at the ICPA, and the amazing chiropractors that help teach for the ICPA. And obviously, there's such a great community. You're part of that community, Jody. So thank you for that, though. So I'm a chiropractor. I'm a second generation chiropractor. So both my parents were chiropractors, and I was kind of born into it. They had me when they were still in school, actually. And, my mom always says, you have no excuse, you graduated chiropractic school twice, because I was in a little, cap and gown as I was in their arms when they graduated back in the 80s. And so when I became a chiropractor, I joined their practice and quickly kind of saw this opportunity to open a second practice, because a lot of pregnant moms would come out of Philadelphia in the city and come to the suburbs where we were located, where the home office was located. And they would do that during pregnancy. But then once they had the baby, it was harder for them to kind of, stick with that. And so going to where people are. And I did that in I think now looking back, a very unique way. I didn't like take out a business loan and open up a huge, and do it like, no, I kind of waded in slowly, and I shared space, and I didn't have, front desk. And my wife came in and, with our newborn and, managed the front desk. And this was back in the day when everything was paper. Like we'd write out the schedule for the next day, or maybe we'd print it out, but we'd have a paper copy. And then as people called that day and it was forwarded to the cell phone or whatever, we'd write them in like, oh, okay, yeah, there's space there. And now there's such great tools to be able to kind of, do that more seamlessly. Obviously, that, but that's kind of where I came up, and I was kind of having a foot in both offices, and just slowly built what I like to call a sustainable family practice. And that means that it's not, super reliant on new patients coming in, but that you're really building a community, that you're kind of relying on that, reputation. You're really in it with the person who's there in front of you. That's how I looked at it. I wasn't like, freaked out if I had gaps in the schedule, as, those early years when I was building. I was like, well, I can't do anything about the people who aren't here. I mean, you can, but, it's limited what you can do. But what I can really do is focus on the person that is here. And so that's kind of the mentality that I brought into, and that really makes you be present, for that visit. And I think that really is what defined my reputation and expanding the reputation of my parents' practice, and, kind of growing it to where now you get referrals from OBGYNs, pregnant moms coming in because their medical doctors are sending them in. So
when I was like 8 months pregnant, I was at an OBGYN appointment, and the OBGYN asked me while I was there as a patient to come check another patient in the other room. They really when they get it, they get it. So talk to me about that. Why would babies and pregnant women need chiropractic? For those who are listening who think that you're of the mindset that chiropractic is about back pain and headaches, my kids have been getting adjusted since they were born, since before they were born, right? So why is that? Why do that?
Well, I mean, I think, if we back it way up and I kind of look at chiropractic, and I guess this kind of comes with growing up, in a chiropractic family like that, where, for me, chiropractic is all about adaptability. It's how, we're always adapting, as humans, all living, things are adapting. A plant adapts when you put it in the window. It's gonna like turn the leaves towards the light first. And then if you don't do anything, it'll just like start growing that way. And that's not wrong. of the plant to do that. That's like very, this built-in kind of intelligence that all living things have. So we're going to adapt. That's a given. The question is, do we have to adapt to today's stressors or next week's stressors with the past, 2 months, 6 months, 10 years of stress adaptation already kind of layered on our
Right.
system? That's how I look at it. And so getting adjusted for me, and how I kind of present it to people that come into the practice, is we're kind of like wiping the slate clean of some of those layers of past adaptation stress. And that makes you more adaptable going forward. Now, that's true for anyone, in my opinion. That's how I look at it. How does that apply to pregnancy? How does that apply to kids? Well, that's like, for me, pregnancy is like the perfect illustration of the intelligent adaptability of the body. It's just like right there in front of you. You're watching it. It's like so obvious. And then for that mom who's going through that process, like, I think she's like really aware of that. Like, wow, my body is pretty amazing, and then they have that baby. And at first there's this like fear and anxiety, perhaps I have to keep this baby safe. That's in it, a parental kind of, baseline feeling. But then you see how magnificent that child's body is and how much they can adapt. Wow, this is really amazing. And I think chiropractic fits in there in kind of like a family wellness model. So well, that's certainly where I like to live and practice. Of course, pain or low back, whatever, brings people in sometimes. But where I'm, kind of living mentally is in that wellness model. And of course, you're kind of sharing that with families and giving them a different perspective, which I think is important, not to like, take them away from the medical model. Like, it all has its place, but so much of what's out there today and what we're exposed to is a fear-based message.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, really can undermine the integrity of a family unit. And you're just kind of like, you fall into certain decisions based on a fear-based mechanism instead of being empowered. And so that's
Right.
why I'm trying to empower, young families. That's my why, if you will. Like, that's kind of the big picture. And I think that's so rewarding, to see that. And obviously I went through that myself, even having been, born into a chiropractor family and raised with a lot of these ideas. Like, you have your own kids, you have your own family, and you are tested, how much you trust the, the body. And okay, wow, this really is amazing how well and adaptable we are. So that's kind of that's my origin story.
It's really tricky being here 20 years later, as a mom who raised 2 kids chiropractically. And now we've got like, we're watching this wave of 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds who, some of them by choice, are saying, my body was made by God. It has what it needs to heal. I say no to this. I say yes to this. This is becoming like a popular thing for 19, 20, 21-year-olds to say, I'm done with the BS. I'm done with not trusting my innate. They get it. And then there's another entire force that says, you can't trust your body. Your body is a battlefield, and it doesn't have the intelligence. We have the intelligence that it needs,
Right.
and it's going to come from here. And, so how do you, I think one of the things I love most about you, Justin, is you embody the attraction rather than promotion principle without trying. It's effortless, where you have a magnetism, a magnetic field about you. Let's say that, because I lost the word, that a lot of really productive leaders, Sue Brown had it too, where your mom had it too. It was like, you're just the kind of person that I want to be around, and I want to know what you're thinking, and I want to know what you're reading just by being you. So I guess I want to hear you talk a little bit about how to have that without, it's effortless for you. And what do you say to the 20-year-old who's on the other side of the fence, where they're like, my body's a battlefield and everything it's doing is wrong? And then here you come in and you're in this still, calm place as a magnet to say, you're good, man. Let's get you adjusted. here, complete certainty and conviction. Please talk about that.
Um, well, you're right. I mean, all of it is not necessarily effortless. I definitely have a pretty strong awareness about how I'm saying things and how those things will be perceived or potentially perceived. And that's the big variable here, right? Is perception and where people are coming from. They're coming from all different places, and you're trying to kind of meet them and not force or say what you've learned up to this point is wrong. Like nobody will ever change their mind if they're told they're wrong. And so I'm not like in the business of saying, people are wrong. And I don't think you get much traction that way. And certainly early on in practice, like this was harder, it's definitely harder. And you would have a great day in practice and people were coming in, they love being there. And that's one of the, really rewarding things about chiropractic is people are coming in because they want to, they're not forced to, so you're basically surrounded with like appreciation all day. And I remember I'd come home and my wife, was, at home with the kids. When I have 4 kids, we had all 4 of them, at home, birthed at home and everything, very kind of natural. But, and she was raising the kids. And if you've raised kids, you're aware that sometimes there's a lack of appreciation that sometimes occurs. And so I'm getting showered with appreciation all day. Meanwhile, she's not necessarily getting that. And anyway, but I remember early on in practice, I would, it could ruin my day. Like if someone came in and they didn't want to be there and like, you could get that, you could feel that vibe. I'm like, well, like, why are you here, man? Then like, if you don't want to be here, and I never loved that feeling. And then initially, I initially didn't love it. And then I came around, I'm like, oh, okay, I just need to do a better job of like, connecting with them. Like it's fundamental to building trust that you must connect with them. You're like, it's the foundational first step. Like, and I wasn't connecting with them. Like, oh, they didn't want to be here. I don't have to connect with them on a like, oh, okay, the body has this intelligence and we're hitting the ground running. Yes, you're here for the same reason I want you to be here, kind of thing. No, I can just I can connect with them as a human.
How do you do that, Justin? How do you say to a new grad, you need to connect with them, and they say, I don't know what you mean. Give me more about that. How do you do that? How do you create that?
I think a lot of people on a first visit want to adhere to a script. They want to get what they have to say out instead of listening to what that person's coming in with. And when you really tune in to what they're coming in with, even when there is a wall up, you can kind of identify, why is there this wall up? Like I had a mom who came in, and this was like after this was only, 5 or so years ago. So I was at the point where now I would look forward to these appointments. And you don't know beforehand, but then they're there and you're like, oh, this person doesn't want to be here. Like they don't really think this is worth their time, but someone important to them told them that they should come in. And I'm seeing the wall up, with this mom who's in for her second pregnancy. And I'm like, okay, why is this wall up? And it became clear to me that she had a really rough experience with her first birth. And she was probably certain that she had the same mentality. It wasn't like, she went to the hospital and had, things done that, she wasn't expecting. Like she was going for the natural. She was going for what she wanted, and it didn't turn out that way. But she has clearly had a team of people that she trusted around her. She's like, and somehow that trust was betrayed. And I remember my wife saying after our first birth, with this look of like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? Because it was like a really hard fought home birth. Like we probably would have been transferred. And if we had been transferred, if it was like a different midwife or whatever, it would have certainly been an intervention, a C-section or whatever. But, and I remember her looking up at me and saying, I feel like everybody lied to me.
Right.
And I'm like, that didn't really land. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, what do you mean? Like, and it didn't land for years. And then it really landed with me when I started thinking about how we talk to pregnant moms. And we often say like, oh, birth is natural. Like you've got this. And like in a genuine way of trying to kind of dismantle the fear that so many of us have approaching our first birth. But like, oh, you don't have to be afraid. Like you're built for this. Your body's designed to give birth. And that is helpful in a certain sense, but it's kind of superficial, because then when you're in labor and it's like,
Why
things.
is it so hard?
Why is it
Right,
so hard? Why are things
right,
so painful? Like I thought I was designed for this, and then you feel like maybe something's wrong with me,
right.
and you
And
start
then
looking
as
for
soon
problems.
as you're plugged into that fear while you're in labor, it's kind of like an acid trip. Like when I was a teenager, I was really into that kind of thing. And as soon as it goes wrong, it's wrong, right? But with birth, it's the same kind of thing where I never knew, Justin, that before I had a baby, and I probably should have known this as a doctor, right? I never knew that contractions came on gradually. For me, for my body, I didn't know that I would have practice contractions and then they would get louder and louder and louder. I thought they were going to go from 0 to 60 because that's how pain has always been in my
Right.
world. And that little thing of knowing where somebody was like, oh, no, it's not going to go from 0 to 60. You're going to have some practice. You're going to feel some squeezing. They call that Braxton Hicks. And then you're probably going to wake up and you're going to feel a lot of pressure. You're going to feel like you're being hugged from the inside. And then you're going to feel this. And then you're going to feel that. I, and I think I even went to a birthing class where all of that was explained, but I wasn't listening because I was
Yeah.
so pregnant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
And you
couldn't
just
listen.
well, I always say, like, with your first two, like, there's this big question mark that you're approaching. Like, okay, it's this thing. I don't know what this thing is. I think I can do this thing. I have a birth plan, but it's a huge question mark. And with your second one, like, at least it's possible.
Right.
No matter how the first one went, you're like, okay, this happens. Like, this is actually reality. Like, I'm going to have another baby. And that changes a lot of things. But with that first one and feeling lied to, and when it really finally landed with me, I'm like, I think we're doing, and not just like chiropractors, but like the natural birth community, I think we're doing a bit of a disservice when we say, oh, you're built for this, just so matter of factly, without then giving moms something that they can work on to strengthen their ability to do the task of birth. Like,
Like
you know,
what? Like
if
what do
we,
you give them?
well, I mean, certain classes lend themselves to this. There's breathing techniques, there's coping techniques. I think having a pelvis that's kind of compliant and able to have that flexibility, that mobility, that getting, adjusted on a regular basis during pregnancy, I think that's a skill. But it's really changing the mindset of saying, like, it's not just about the choices that we make in childbirth and pregnancy. It's the skills that we enter that process with. Are you going in with, hypnobirthing kind of breathing exercises where you have coping skills, and then you can apply that skill whether you have, a home birth, vaginal, cesarean, whatever it is. You can apply these coping skills, but it also really helps to satiate the part of the mind that is like, what have I done to prepare for this? I'm being told I don't need to do anything. I'm designed to give labor, but like our brain also wants us to prepare. Like I'm designed to run, but I'm not going to
Okay.
like not do anything leading up to a marathon I have in 9 months from now. It's like, no, I'm going to train, like I have to train and
And
develop these
truthfully,
skills.
like our bodies are designed for labor, sure, but a lot of us sit all day. That's not the way that our body is designed, right?
Yeah,
A lot of
100%.
us don't have core strength. A lot of us grow up on an American diet. And I was just saying to my husband the other day that you can't do. It's like I feel like 25 years ago, I could have seen a symptom process and watched its journey and say, oh, look at innate moving through, and I can see the synchronicity and the rhythm of all of it. I don't see that as much anymore because there's so much disturbance in people's bodies with all this stuff, right? So let's go there. I want to talk about the care and nurturing of a mom in pregnancy as well as a baby when they come into the world. What are the resources? And let's talk ICPA. Let's talk about the courses that you offer to chiropractors, which are ridiculously awesome. Tell us more about what's available to us. The Pathways Connect magazine, it's the center of my practice. Like you come to my office, you see that magazine, and you see right there, look, this is what's possible here. Take this home and read it.
Yeah. Yeah, that magazine my mom started that magazine, I think it was '01, and it started in 2001. And She was just sick of having magazines in the office. Even if you would opt for like the, like National Geographic, you're like, oh, okay, it's mostly just like looking at stuff. You'd still have, a pharmaceutical ad every other, story or every other page or whatever. And she's like, this is just so incongruent. So I want a magazine that looks great, it's beautiful, but it has stories and pictures that are like, talking about how well the body functions, and kind of giving, like, we don't get that message. Ina May Gaskin, famous midwife, talked about this as well. And she actually wrote a book, Spiritual Midwifery, or Choices in Child, but I can't remember which one it was, but where it's just birth story after birth story after birth story that are successful, because we generally don't hear those stories. We hear oh, this is what happened, this is how my birth went bad, or I got transferred because of that. We hear all the things that could go wrong. And of course, medicine is great at that, looking at like all the things that can go wrong and like finding the problems that might, be a problem. And that's like a lot of focus on the problem side of things instead of a focus on, what adds health, what adds kind of vitality to someone's life. And so Pathways is of that mindset. It's not a chiropractic magazine per se. There are articles about chiropractic, but it really gets into homeschooling and unschooling and, natural parenting, different ways to kind of look at, symptoms and disease that are happening in your body. Lots of focus on birth, because it is such of a big, question mark for so many people, that it kind of helps to kind of illuminate that. So that's the purpose of Pathways. And, I don't know, you might be able to see it in the upper corner, but I have a Pathways podcast, mural on the wall back there. And that's another resource. All of this is for, chiropractors look forward to it as well. The practitioners, love it as well, but it's for the public to give them a resource of something like, oh, I don't have to be, I don't have to carry that anxiety. There's something here bringing down, that anxious tone instead of kind of ramping it up, which happens so frequently nowadays, it seems like.
It's nice to know that you're not alone in it too. Like,
yeah.
A lot of my pregnancy experience, I had 2 kids, and a lot of it was like, is it okay that this is happening? Like, is this normal? Is my body really going to do this? Do you know that when Quinn, he's 17 now, and he was breech up until he was born, and I went to your mom's office, and I drove out to her house, and I was really nervous because your mom intimidated me. She was one of those mentors that seemed untouchable to me because she was tough. And I'm not so tough, right? And I was going to get adjusted by Jeannie because I knew something was up with my pelvis, and I knew that I needed a really good structural adjustment, so that there was enough room for a baby to just innately go where baby needed to go. And I knew innately that adjustment was going to be a game changer for me. And it was. And Quinn went head down, and it wasn't, her intention was to make sure I wasn't subluxated. And that's exactly what she did. And my body's intention was to optimize the birth experience. Right. And I'll never forget that. It was like this feeling of, holy smokes, man, like, this really is amazing. It's amazing. And we see it every day, and I'm part of it every day, but I'm not the patient every day. I'm the one with the gift of being able to serve this thing every day. But to be on the patient end of it and to experience the magic of chiropractic in pregnancy with Jeannie Ohm, it was absolutely one of the experiences of my lifetime. So I guess I'm saying thank you to Jeannie from here. Right?
It's reminding me of, because I agree with you, when you get adjusted and you're like, oh wow, how do people live without this? Like, this is so relevant to health and wellness.
It's so relevant.
And I would adjust my mom very often. My dad would too, but you know how it is with, kind of spouses kind of adjusting each other. So a lot of times she would have me adjust her. And she forced me to start learning how to adjust before I went to chiropractic school. I'm like, the summer before, and she's like, all right, come adjust me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm like, 21-year-old kid. I'm like, I haven't even like thought about school. I'm like, let's wait until I have like a couple semesters under my belt or something. She's like, no. You're not going to chiropractic school not knowing how to adjust. Get over here. But like years later, and I'm a pretty good adjuster, and I would adjust her and she would razz me. She'd be like, oh my God, people pay you for this? And she would just razz me. But every single time when she would get off the table, she's like, I don't know how people live without that. I don't
Right.
know how people live without that, but she, in the midst of it, I'd let her have it. Cause like, I'm sure she was, people kind of tiptoed around her a little bit, but her firstborn, now I'm going to give it right back to her, kind of thing.
You guys, if you didn't know her, she was tough. She was a tough cookie, and
Yeah.
such an ambassador of light in our profession. So, what would you say to a chiropractor who's new in practice and kind of lost? Like, where do they start? What's the, or even, I mean, we have people listening to this who aren't chiropractors. You're impressed, say they come to you, they're in practice, they're stuck, they're strung out, they're broke,
Hmm.
they're, whatever, addicted, they don't see the light, they don't see the hope. What do you say to them?
Well, I think chiropractors and a lot of professions, but definitely chiropractors, are in the business of trust, of
Mm,
building and establishing, trust with people. And you cannot expect someone to trust you if you don't trust yourself. And
mm,
so early on in practice, there was something like, oh gosh, like, and I, kind of had a baby face. I looked young for a long time until I started going gray. But I'm like, oh, I look really young and experienced. I didn't trust myself enough, I think. And I think I could have just like catapulted or leapt over some of those early years and that insecurity if I trusted myself more. And that does apply to other, whatever profession you're in. It's kind of like it's like the happiness hack that I see a lot of times. Chiropractors have this, like the purpose driven chiropractor that you just gravitate towards. Like, what do they have in common? They're not
mm,
looking at what they do as a job. They're looking at what they do as a calling. You know what I mean? Like, they have a real mission in life. And it's not just that they have a mission, because you could have a mission in finance and investing, whatever, oh, my mission is to make money. But like, their mission is centered around serving people. That's the happiness hack from my experience, from my vantage point. And when I can remind myself of that, and I wish I could go back and remind myself that early
mm,
on, like, and I think a lot of times I was tapping into that when I was like, no, focus on the person in front of you. I didn't have the words, to
mhm,
kind of back that up. And I'm like, I just know to focus on this person. They're here. Let me just
mhm,
focus. So that makes you present, and you are in service of that person. But really owning that mentality, that's the happiness hack. That really is
mhm,
what allows people to like, I'm doing something bigger than myself,
mm,
bigger than this profession. And it's really kind of with that mindset that I think you have a full faith and trust in yourself. And then people, they just trust you, and it's not based on a facade. It's like, you are trustworthy, at that point. And you really are, if you're there with them present in the moment, like, I am serving that person. They do have my best intentions. I have their best intentions. It's a really, I think that's the thing that I had to learn over time, or put words to at least. And I think, people could jump into that with 2 feet right out of school.
mhm. Awesome. Okay, so here we go. Strong family, shared space, sustainable family practice. Focus on the person who is there. Chiropractic is about adaptability. We are going to adapt, wiping the slate clean, strong awareness. Nobody will change their mind if they're told they're wrong. That's my favorite. The
Hmm.
foundational first step is connection. Focus on the solutions. Pathways podcast. In the business of trust, and not expect somebody to trust you if you don't trust yourself. It's a calling, not a job. Mission centered around serving people. Just focus on the person in front of you. Anything else that you want to share?
Wow, That
Yeah,
sounds pretty good when you sum it up like that.
that's pretty good, right? We could
No,
turn that
I
into
think
a new
certainly,
book.
I think there's something to be said about, confidence and a lot of people, I know we learn how to adjust, all populations, quote unquote, in school. But I think that's really the niche that the ICPA is filling, is that they're giving docs more confidence in taking
Mhm,
care of pregnant moms, in taking care of babies and newborns. And if you scoop up a baby, if a mom hands you a baby, number one, like, you've established trust, and you better
yeah,
not break that trust. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You better know what you're doing. You better look like you know what you're doing, not just that you know what you're
mhm,
doing. You better be really comfortable in that situation. And I think, getting that exposure, getting that experience, and then really kind of diving into, and the community that, the ICPA represents too. It's like, it's a real family vibe
so
community.
awesome.
Like,
Mhm,
we're a family,
mhm,
and I don't really care where you are politically or any other, aspect. But if you're on a mission of taking care of families and kids, like, you're part of the family. That's it.
mhm. And I definitely feel that. One other thing that your mom taught me is to always ask the baby for permission
Yeah.
before I start. And if I do not get permission from the baby, sometimes that happens. I say to mom, you know what, or dad, just hang out. I'll be back in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm gonna go adjust a few people. Just kind of get some space, get some water, maybe nurse baby or whatever. I'll come back. And if I get a yes, then we'll move forward. But if not, we're gonna wait until the next visit.
Yeah.
And I really do that. And it doesn't happen often, but it happens. And Jeannie is one of the people who I ask to protect me and be with me when I'm in service. So
And Jody, when you ask for permission and for other people out, like, what does that mean? Like, out loud? It's like, no, it doesn't. I mean, it
mhm,
can be with eye contact, but it better be with a smile, because
mhm,
pre-verbal, infant, baby, like, they are picking up your vibe based
mhm.
on, are you looking at them in the eyes, and are you smiling at them? Can they trust you? That's how they base that decision early on. So, yeah, you have to smile. And that's the other thing. It's so rewarding to be, like, I'm in a state of just I'm smiling all day in practice, because, like, that's what connection requires. And that's a
Mm,
pretty rewarding way to live too.
so
So
awesome. Okay, so here's my question for you regarding staffless practice and all the cool things that we're doing over here. If someone was to say, I'm checking out what Jody Dinnerman's doing with staffless practice and the practice suite and all of the things, what's your opinion? What do you think about the different things that she's creating? What would you say?
I think it is super, super relevant, to be able to run a practice on a very lean, nimble kind of budget, minimal overhead. I think that is, I graduated in '06, and then a year later, we're going into this great financial recession kind of thing. And being lean and being low overhead and being solo practitioner, sharing space, doing it creatively, um, was my path to success. It wasn't, uh, business loan, business plan, pristine, like, office. You walk in, like, no, I was, sharing space with an acupuncture for many years in Philly, and it worked out great. And so I think that's so relevant right now, because I think things are a little shaky economically, obviously, and everything's so expensive. So if you can keep your overhead lower, and if you can offer affordable care to people, I think that is a very, very relevant. I would steer people in that direction, before, hiring someone on right off the bat, kind of thing.
Mhm. I love it. Thank you,
Yeah.
Justin.
Yeah.
Justin, stay in the podcast room for all of those listening. Go make the world better with great care, and we'll talk to you in the next podcast. Thanks for listening.